and welcome to the Harborview. I'm Joe Collymore. Harbor Media recently held its annual meeting and open house event, which was a huge success. Highlights included board members elected to new terms, catered food, live music, and after the initial meeting, attendees were welcome to tour the studio as well as network and socialize with other members and community guests. Some even gave on-camera comments about the event and their experience at Harbor Media. The event marked a productive year for our organization and forecasted another for 2020. As you may recall, town meeting saw the passing of a local plastic bag ban. Starting November 1st, Hingham stores will no longer be able to bag goods in plastic bags. This law, sponsored by the Cleaner Greener Hingham, prohibits stores in town from providing single-use plastic checkout bags to customers due to their negative impact on the environment. Hingham now joins the other 92 towns in Massachusetts with this ban, including Duxbury, Marshfield, Situate, Cohasset, Pembroke, and Plymouth. The movement encourages shoppers to use their own reusable bags or paper bags instead. Fines for violation of this law would be as follows: a warning for the first violation, $100 fine for the second violation, $200 fine for third violation, and $300 fine for subsequent violations. The Board of Health would be responsible for enforcement. Hingham Square is full of merriment as we enter the holiday season. Holly Jolly Hingham is a month-long celebration to accompany your holiday shopping. Starting November 30th and continuing every Saturday until December 21st, festive events will kick off. Take photos with character cutouts, play I Spy Tiny Reindeer in shop windows, and drop off a letter in Santa's mailbox, expressed to the North Pole, and Santa may even respond. Horse-drawn hay rides will take place every Saturday between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Christmas in the Square is slated for Friday, December 6th. More details to come. To keep up with all that's going on with the Hingham Downtown Association, go to discoverhingham.com. Our guest today is Andy Ayer, member of the Cleaner Greener Hingham Committee. So, what is the mission of the Cleaner Greener Hingham Committee?
So the mission of the Cleaner Greener Committee is essentially to educate the public in regards to best practices in reducing waste from a short-term and a long-range perspective and everything. And some of the things they can do, whether it be recycling, ideas to reduce and reuse. We talk about more or less have always been about the 3 R's, which are, reduce, reuse, recycle, but having more of a 5 R approach, which is sort of the first one being refuse, is kind of taking a step back and looking for alternatives to say, like, what's the end of life of this packaging and everything? Do I really need it? Can I do with something else? And then the 5th R is recover, or / rot. Recover is the more one they use, which is about composting, because 30% of food waste is part of garbage, essentially. And what we can do to recover that and everything. So, one of the things we have talked about within the group is that it's really just sort of like a talking point in regards to, is this something we want to look at later on? But then that's something that has to go to talking with the Board of Health, talking with the selectmen, talking with the DPW, whether or not that's a viable program. Do we bring a third party to manage that and everything? And those types of things are kind of like, okay, now, if that's the case and there's money involved, then we're talking about town meeting and everything. So it's sort of kind of in the infancy state right now. It's one of the things that last week I gone to a master planning and put it on the master planning and say, we want to talk about this.
Now, starting next month, we're now going to be doing away with single-use plastic bags. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, we know that a number of our markets and other retailers have already started conditioning their customers with this idea of, all right, bring your own bags to the market, and if you've got to use a plastic bag, we're going to perhaps charge an extra 2, 3 cents, 5 cents for it. But now, starting in November, we're now totally eliminating single-use plastic bags. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, is that just here in the town of Hingham?
No, and part of that is another reason why this whole started the conversation was, our next door neighbors, Cohasset, Marshfield, also Situate, also voted in, and we started talking about kind of like the good neighbor rule, right? In regards to, one of the points I made was, it's great Cohasset has a ban, it's great Marshfield has a ban, Situate and everything, but we're drawing folks from those communities into the Derby shops, shipyard and everything, and they're leaving with plastic bags. So in some ways, we're actually polluting their communities in an offhand way, right? Because it's great that they've eliminated single-use plastic bags, but then they're still getting them from us, right? So, and they're, and we're a major, provider, retailers and everything. So that was one aspect of it, but also to us being a coastal community and everything, getting into the waterways, it gets into marine life. We talk about breaking down a single-use plastic into microplastics, gets into the food chain and everything, and so if it's getting into the food chain, possibly now it's getting into us.
When I am in various stores where, let's say I'm ordering a beverage of some sort, and they'll bring out a plastic straw, and immediately I stop. And I'll say, no, I don't want the plastic straw. And to my delight, I discovered, and I can't recall exactly where, but this one particular establishment, not in Hingham, but nearby, had straws made out of cornstarch, which I thought was just why hasn't this gotten around?
Right.
What's going on here?
Right. And straws themselves are interesting, right? Because it was I actually went to a program in Duxbury, and they showed a mini movie called Straws, and they talked about it. Straws have been around for millennia, right? And it's only a fairly recent thing in the 1950s where they started being made by single-use plastic, and that was pretty much the reason why, is because Americans became more driving on the road. It was easy to drink with a plastic straw and having a soda, pitch it out of the car and everything. But people are starting to realize, wow, man, this stuff is all over the place, and it doesn't degrade, and it doesn't go back into the soil or anything, right? It just stays there forever. One of the pushback for straws and everything, and that's not something we're trying to implement to get rid of straws, but there's been, one of the things that's been happening right now at the elementary level, at the East schools, a bunch of kids came up and they talked about doing to get rid of single-use straws and everything, and coming up with the ideas of straws on demand, right? Because then you start talking about folks who actually need them, folks with disabilities, and they need to drink and everything. And I myself will tell you that, I have different type of straws at the house. I have metal ones, paper ones, and everything. And I do kind of agree with, it's different texture to have a metal straw in your mouth, regards to kind of chomp down, doesn't feel things. Okay, maybe we use a silicone tip and everything, but it's sort of kind of it's trial and everything, right? So, I mean, I like paper straws. I generally don't like straws to begin with, but if I have to have a straw, it's paper, but if it's not, I just don't use a straw.
Let's talk about some of the upcoming plans and developments of the committee. What have you got coming around on the calendar?
Well, the first step is getting through the implementation of the reduction of single-use plastic and promoting reusable bags.
How are you going to go about doing that? Do you have a plan in place to roll this out?
Yeah, currently what we've been doing is we've been posting items up on the town Facebook page for folks to share out. Different businesses, we put out flyers, businesses, and they were promoting it within their store. I know Stop and Shop recently said, on the change, we're moving over to paper. Um, but also too, just sort of kind of encouraging people out in the streets, saying, have you thought about using a reusable bag? And as more and more people start using them, it gets easier. My own brother, he lives in Hingham also, and he wasn't very happy about the proposal passing and everything. And Adam was like, well, I don't want to carry a bag everywhere with me. And I'm like, well, you don't have to carry a bag with you everywhere. I mean, just think about when you're shopping, just leave them in the car, right? If you're going grocery shopping. And I even got him a bag, the reusable bag that actually looks like a plastic bag with a smiley face, have a nice day. And he actually uses it now. But he curses me out every time he uses it. But it's use what works for you, right? In regards to, if you just have to use paper, that's okay. You don't have to feel bad, because there's some folks who will say paper is just as bad as plastic, right? In regards to climate change and everything, right? And it's like, yes, but paper can be recycled, right? Plastic bags necessarily can't, right? They have to go through a different process and everything. And the town of Hingham doesn't do it at the transfer station for recycling. You could do that at Stop and Shop, you could do it at Whole Foods, but then now you're collecting your bags to bring there and everything. So it's just another step. So, to help eliminate that step, would be go to paper and everything, and encourage reusable bags whenever possible.
Implementation, long-range planning, waste management. What do you see going forward?
Well, that's kind of like on the talk for master planning right now, what the town is going through. A personal goal for myself, and I know for some of the committee members, would be to get composting at the transfer station. But that's not an immediate reality. That's something that has to really go through review. That's something that has to be really talked about. And there's a whole host of different issues that come up with how do they manage that? Is there going to be a rodent problem, right? That's a real concern for the Board of Health, right? And what do you do there? So it's not something for the immediate, but something to talk about for later on. But also continue, working with the green teams at the schools and promoting, ways to reduce waste and everything, and using alternatives, whether it be, using a bamboo toothbrush as opposed to a plastic toothbrush, right? You don't have to go so extreme that you're making your own toothpaste, right? But some people will, right? So, but it's using those tools and creating the conversation and kind of sharing of ideas.
You're talking about the green team in the schools. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So every one of the schools has a green team, and the high school one, a couple of students actually talked at the town meeting in regards to the plastic bag initiative. And one of the things they do at the high school is slash the trash, and what they get the sports teams involved in regards to putting the trash in the right places. They have a composting program at the high school. Taking your recycled stuff, putting it in the recycling, and what is truly trash in the trash. And they sort of it's like a little competition, and from what I understand, is they'll get like pizza from Crow Point, whoever does it the best, they tabulate who doesn't, the percentage, if they missed anything, right? At the elementary level, it's really kind of just talking about the conversation. One of the things, like just mentioned, was they're working on getting rid of plastic bottles. That's been a conversation, and they actually presented in front of the school committee, I believe, this past June, I think it was. So I know that's conversations going on. I don't know where that is. I'm not involved with the elementary school level. And then at the middle school, this past spring, they hosted Showing Plastic Ocean, which is talking about the gyres in the ocean and everything, and what people could do better and everything. And someone from the aquarium was there to kind of answer questions, and just kind of continue the conversation there.
So this is a real concerted effort on the part of the community across our schools, now into our markets and other retail outlets, if you will, within the town and within our neighboring towns, to consciously eliminate, if not outright ban, single-use plastic bags, and then turning attention to plastic bottles and who knows, perhaps downstream, getting after the plastic straws, which, as I understand, is quite dangerous for marine life, particularly sea turtles. Is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding in regards to straws and everything, and we as a community, we kind of have to kind of monitor and look what's really best for the community. Lexington has banned a while ago plastic water bottles, over a certain size, under a certain size, right? I believe it was I want to say Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. They got rid of takeaway, containers and everything, and other types of forms of single-use plastic and everything. Lexington also just did plastic utensils and everything. So it's really kind of looking at, what's really affecting our community. Plastic bags is something that's sort of kind of going throughout the state. Currently, 53% of the state population lives under a plastic bag reduction law and everything, and it's currently within the state being talked about being statewide. States that have recently passed it have been Maine. I know Rhode Island was looking at it. New York has passed this. California has passed this. So, it's a conversation that people are having.
We're beginning to see bits and pieces, as I would call it, without naming who the coffee chain is. But I've noticed that in certain communities where you'll stop for the drive-through for a cup of coffee, they've eliminated the styrofoam cups and they're now using paper cups. But I've noticed that that's not consistent, and that's from one fast food stop to the next stop, because each of those franchisees, if you will, they're independent, so they make their own decision if they're going to.
Right.
It's not a dictate from.
Well, it's usually a slow rollout, from what I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, from what I understand. So, because when they transition, from my understanding, so when they transition from store to store, there is a certain cost involved. So, because sometimes they may need new equipment, right? Now we know cups just come in a container, right? So it's not, but like with anything, it's maybe they need possibly new equipment, a new way of doing things. So it's kind of training the staff and everything like that. So that's usually, it's a lot slower rollout, especially when you're, a corporation like, the coffee not to be named, but they might have, a couple thousand stores they have to go through.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So and that's a lot of work.
And it's interesting as well, when you make that transition in a slow rollout, it's one thing to go from a styrofoam cup to a paper cup. That travel lid is a whole different thing.
Right.
And, suddenly now you're working with a lid that just doesn't seem to work as a travel lid.
Right, exactly.
Sense. Yeah.
But also, too, a lot of people don't know the benefits of bringing a reusable mug to the coffee stores and everything, because usually there can be a pretty sizable difference in price in regards to how much that coffee costs. And a lot of people don't know that.
That's a good point. I wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was one, Dunkin' Donuts I had gone to. Can't remember where it was. It was like 80 cents.
Using your
own cup
container. Yeah. That's good stuff. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we touch on relative to the activities and the efforts of the Cleaner Greener Committee?
I think one of the other things too is it's available on Facebook is it's not sanctioned by Cleaner Greener, but there's actually a Facebook group called Sustainable Hingham that a lot of people in the community have been using, and doing kind of like the same thing, bouncing off ideas. Also to reach out to the Cleaner Greener Committee on the town, page, web page and everything. There should be an email link on there that get directly to us and everything.
Andy, this has been great. I really enjoyed having you here and sharing with us this work of the Cleaner Greener community at large. And let's make sure that we find time in the future to sort of double back with each other and just see how things are progressing here in Hingham.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Andy.
You're welcome.